Welcome to NinjaCast, a photography podcast powered by Studio Ninja, the world's highest rated business management app, built specifically for photographers. Listen and learn as the most successful photographers on the planet share their knowledge to help you transform every element of your photography business. Here's your host, Sally Shaw.
Hi guys, welcome to NinjaCast. Today I'm joined by the very lovely Victoria, the brand new CEO of Image Salon. I can't wait to speak to Victoria today. We're going to cover all things outsourcing and even the taboo of outsourcing in the industry itself. Let's get started. Hi Victoria, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. The pleasure is all mine today. I'm really, really excited. So Victoria, we've got a lot of ground to cover today. So yeah. I'm going to jump right in and just ask you to kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your journey and your new career path.
Yes, quite new. So my journey, I started off as a photographer. I was educated in photography, but my journey started quite young. I started shooting and developing my own film when I was 14. So gave me that little, nudge of being creative at a very early age. And I, learned how to develop film and roll and talk about composition and all that. And that was a very nice experience growing up.
Amazing.
And then I, as a lot of parents try to veer you off some paths, I thought I was going to be a psychologist and tried that path and then quickly came back to photography. So yeah, and I went to college. And then I managed my first photography team as a student still in college. So it was, a career path that started pretty early because I am a photographer, but I've managed many teams over the last 17 years. So I said, I would say I would just love to work with teams rather than going only on the freelancing path. So yeah, from there, across Canada, I managed different teams, so retouching and photo. And then after college, I had this little bit of a cushion to start my own studio, and I decided to put everything in storage instead and go on ships and be a photographer across the world. So I did that for many years. Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and which is why I was saying that I know a bit about the UK and all that. But yeah, I for over 6 years I've traveled the world as a photographer, but also managing different studios. So I was lucky enough to open different studios across the world on ships, which gave me, I think, that love for leadership more than, well, not more, but I would say equally with photography. So being at the forefront of technology, always improving a lot of processes and organizing different teams and working with people from all over the world was really exhilarating for me.
Absolutely. So it should be. That sounds like an incredible journey that you've been on.
Yeah. And after living in your suitcases for 20 years, I think in your early 20s, you can do that. So I did that for a while, and then I came back home and started freelancing, shooting weddings, which was great. And eventually ended up at Image Salon. I was curious. Back then, it was still a startup. I think it was in the first 2 years. And it had an amazing reputation already. So I just wanted to work with the best. So I started off as an editor, moved to QC manager, and then director of operations eventually over the last few years. And this summer, appointed as the new CEO. So very exciting.
That's super exciting. So I mean, we're talking to the top today, as there's there's not many times that we get to do that here. So that's absolutely amazing that we get to really pick your brains. And, you know, you've seen it all. You've been right down there as an editor, you know, really seeing people's work firsthand and carrying out those edits for them. And then now fast forward how many years and you're now CEO, which is what a journey. That's absolutely phenomenal. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's very exciting. And I think, you know, I have a lot to bring with my experience. It's been quite the journey, I would say. I'm very proud of where I am, but in all honesty, it's just part of the path. And it's exciting for Image Salon too. So
absolutely. And how have you found kind of stepping into that role? Has it been a bit like a duck to water? Has it just kind of come naturally to you?
I think because I'm so interested in how our team and across different teams, but I think I'm interested in how people work together. So, you know, beyond the technology, I think I'm more interested in making the process work for both the clients and our team. So it's very rewarding for me to see, you know, our company evolve and making sure that everything works smoothly. Because we do work with artists, so I think that's been, you know, a great learning curve over the years, is to manage different expectations and sensibilities as well. So it's very rewarding in that sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, what a bombshell to start on. I love that. So, I mean, outsourcing can be a little bit of a taboo subject, shall we say, you know, amongst the photographers out there, even videographers out there. You know, all of our listeners, I'm sure, will have their own opinions currently on outsourcing. I actually outsource my work as a photographer. However, I haven't always. I've probably been outsourcing now for about 3 or 4 years. And before that, I was totally in the camp of nobody could do it like I do it. They may even be better than I do it, but it won't look the way that I can get it to look. It'll be obvious that somebody else has edited it. And it took me years and years and years to get to that point. And to be honest, it was burnout that got me to that point. I shot far too many weddings in 1 year. And I was exhausted. I was probably borderline about to, you know, head into hospital because my body had given up.
Oh, no.
And it was that forced it, really. It was a necessity rather than something I thought, oh, that sounds nice. So I'm sure there's photographers and videographers listening to this that say, that's where I'm at. You know, why would you have somebody edit your work when you can edit yourself?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, sorry to cut. I was going to ask you what brought you to that point to want to outsource, because that's usually where I like to start, is like, do you go ahead and hustle and do everything yourself until you're completely burnt out? And then by measure of urgency, then you reach out to different companies and different people. So yeah, it is taboo because, you know, the fact that we work with artists all over the world. So photographers are their own, they have their own processes, and it's taboo because I believe for some, it doesn't seem as authentic if you outsource. I don't know if it was one of the questions that you had for yourself, but, you know, if you don't bring the work all from the booking to the delivery to the client, if you don't do all the steps yourself, is it authentic? So I think that's where the taboo conversation can start. And
it's a scary thing. I think one of my worries was always, what if my clients found out? Like, and actually now I'm like, I don't care if my clients find out. Like, it's a good thing, if anything, that, you know, if my clients know that I am outsourcing and I'm working with businesses so that I can get them their images back quicker than I probably would be able to myself. I just think it's a hush hush subject in the industry. It has been. I feel like the past year or so, maybe 2, it's become more spoken about. Like, you see in Facebook groups now, people saying, you know, I need to outsource. Like, who do we recommend? Who can give me some names? And you didn't see that kind of 3 and 4 years ago.
And I think if we were to compare it, I don't know if you do your own taxes, but most applications you can do it yourself, and I think it's easy to do. But do you want to do it? I don't think it's you can outsource taxes and all those things. I think outsourcing your edits, there's a way to control your edits so that you have some sort of artistic input, obviously, and then the bulk of it, because I think editing takes a lot of time. I don't know how much time you were spending editing.
Too much.
We can talk about working overnight, working all the whole day, and just trying to, and when you're working on your own images, it's infinite the number of changes you can do. So keeping that objective side of delivering to the clients and still looking at every single image to see if it's good enough. It's you can spend so much time. And I know this because I do it on my own images. I prefer to outsource because I don't have to double think if the communication is there. And I think, and if we backtrack a little bit, if we think about the photographers maybe 20 years ago, I've been, since I'm 13, 14, I've been in photography. And back then we used to drop our film to the lab, or go to the lab and do our own techniques and dodge and burn with our hands, and work with those dials in the film color lab. But we didn't process every single image. We dropped it off the lab. So we have to think about it. I don't know, something happened with the digital world where we took on all of that work that used to be back then outsourced. So it just makes sense.
We've gone full circle.
We've gone full circle. Yeah, I think it just makes sense that we bring that back. Absolutely. At least for the bulk of the edits. I think it's
for sure. I mean, it's a process as well, isn't it? I mean, talk us through kind of your client journey. So let's say I've never outsourced before. I've not even so much as looked at a company's website. How do you kind of take your client through that?
So there's different ways to go about it. We do have an onboarding process where it's a guided conversation. So it's learning how, what the current edits look like, what they like with their editing, what they would like to improve. We look at sample images. It could be your own images, and it can also be somebody else's images, the direction towards which you want to go. The guided conversation is to know if they're happy with it, first of all. Because of our expertise, we're able to evolve that style if needed. And then we do, after those initial questions, we do live editing to make sure that the preferences are down, and to see if we're aligned before assigning to an editor. So the client photographer is paired up with one of our editors, which is great because they get to build that relationship. I always see outsourcing as a collaboration if we want it to be successful. So a lot of communication, like any successful relationship. Sure. I think that's key. So that's the main onboarding process is a technical conversation, I would say. So it's great. Yeah.
So when it comes to the editors then, when you say they're assigned an editor, is that their editor? They always edit their work, or do they kind of have a team of people that then edit their work around that editor?
It's a mix of both, depending on the volume that the client sent in. We have either a single editor or a team of editors. So depending on the turnaround times that they need, and the volume especially. So clients that send in, 30, 50 weddings a year, we're most likely going to assign them a team of editors. Yeah. And then we also have the express services, which is great for clients who just want the basic edits out without any tailored approach. So we also have that for if they would like to do their own tailored, putting their own preset and preferences on top of it. So it could be, there's different levels of outsourcing. You can outsource the entirety of your editing or part of it just to get the bulk of it, the bulk of the work done. And you can fine tune at home. So it's interesting where it's pretty flexible in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so let's say you've onboarded me. I'm coming to Image Salon and you're going to start editing my work, and I get assigned a team of editors, let's say, because I probably shoot between 30 and 50 a year. How does that team then go about learning how I edit? Do they watch that onboarding call back? Do they, is it a case of kind of sample images or things like that? Like, how do they get inside my head?
It's a great question. We've often been labeled mind readers at certain extents because of the success of the onboarding. But yes, and it is a learning curve. So we do ask for a few orders before nailing the look. There's different steps to this. So yes, after the initial onboarding call, there is a handshake that happens between the onboarder and the editor or the team of editors. So that's a conversation. We go over the samples that were delivered during the call or after the call. And once the client sends in their first order, there's another round of samples for that specific order. So in that sense, the editor takes care of those new samples to make sure that we're aligned. And, a conversation can happen afterwards if there's any tweaks before proceeding to the full order. So that's the main process for the first few orders. But obviously after the first order can be perfect, or it can have, we can need some adjustments. And that's, we always encourage and recommend giving as much feedback as you can in order to really streamline the outsourcing process for editors, because as much as we'd like to mind read, it's quite impossible to do through a computer. But it's we do offer calls if there's any alignment needed, and it's mainly what happens. So 3 to 5 orders is usually the number of back and forths that we need to really hone in to somebody's style.
I can, everybody is so subjective, aren't they? My edit would be totally different to one of my friends, even if perhaps we're even in the same style of editing. Perhaps we both still have that, the bold, punchy look, but actually mine's quite warm and hers is quite cool, or hers is quite neutral. It's very, even though you're necessarily in a set style, or maybe you're even not, your work can differ so vastly from the person sat next to you, right?
Yeah. And don't you find sometimes when you look at your own edits, you want to go a different direction and you can't stop re-editing and re-editing it just and then that's the kind of thing that we can't read clients' minds on that, but at least it gives you some sort of freedom if you're able to just give some guidance to the editor to make sure that it's at least consistent with the rest of your edits.
Yeah, definitely.
And people evolve as well. Like over the years, we've had clients that their style has evolved as well. So that's interesting to see. Either because they've changed preferences, or sometimes we see it with trends. There's different trends, obviously. You've probably seen it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to see our clients evolve over the years as well.
I forgot to ask you, so for our listeners that maybe are thinking about coming and chatting with you at Image Salon, what's the kind of turnaround time that they can expect on orders?
Good question. So we are, I don't know when this podcast is going to be aired, but right now we're in the middle of high season. Normally our turnaround times is between 5 to 10 business days. At the moment, because of strong influx after the world reopening, we're so grateful that people are working again, and there's some sense of normalcy. I don't know how it is in the UK right now, but we definitely feel it. We're pushing the deadlines a little bit, and we're working hard on getting the turnaround times back to standard. So I would say, normally 5 to 10 business days. So
that's so fast.
Yeah.
Like not that I would want to sit there all day, every day, but I don't even think I could edit a whole wedding myself in that time.
Yeah.
I don't think.
How long would it take you to edit a wedding? Can I ask?
Yeah, of course you can. I think if I was doing it how I normally would, in which I'll maybe do like an hour or 2 each day, I could totally take about a week and a half to 2 weeks, because I'll do like a rough edit, and then I'll go back through and I'll use brushes and radial filters, and I'll really fine tweak things. But I think you're one or the other. You're either really fast at editing or you're really fast at culling, and I can cull a wedding in like half an hour, 40 minutes.
Wow.
I'm down. I'm like where I need to be. Yeah. I'm so brutal.
Yeah.
But the editing is the bit that really takes me the time. So, I mean, it's difficult. I can't recall a time now where I didn't outsource because I've been doing it a couple of years now, but I remember the feeling. I remember feeling overwhelmed. I remember feeling dread every time I sat down and I looked at this list next to my computer of all these couples' names and all these weddings and all these dates that they had to be done by. And I'm like, I don't even know how I have the hours to do this.
Yeah.
And it is the best feeling now having catalogs come back and they're done. You know, I have to maybe tweak 5%, and that's me just being like fussy, really, like personal preferences here and there, like the tiniest things. And then I just send it off, and it comes down from like this 2-week masquerade into like this half an hour, the job is done.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And don't you find yourself that freedom is something that I hear a lot. The freedom of outsourcing gives you time not only to take care of more clients or just build continue to build your business, but having that, we're talking a lot since the pandemic, like mental health and taking care of yourself. I think it's an important conversation to have. Yeah. And that's part of it. Taking time for yourself just to like contemplate and see where you want to go instead of spending hours in front of the computer to edit. I think it's very freeing and makes from conversations from different photographers, it's been great to outsource because of that extra time.
Absolutely. I mean, if anything, the pandemic kind of showed us what it was like to have family life again. And, we're all so used to being out all the weekends and some of the weekdays. And then if we're not out, we're editing, we're glued to the computer, we're doing admin. And for me, I mean, I remember kind of the pandemic in the UK kicked in about March. And I remember in the October, the November thinking, I am done for the year. Like, I don't want to see another wedding for a little while. I need a break. And I still had a few left to shoot that year. And then the following year kicked off in like the February. Yeah. I was supposed to.
That's early.
And I was so grateful for the time off. And it was a lot longer than I expected it to be, granted. But it kind of made me go full circle. And I'm like, I'm so grateful to be out shooting weddings again. There is no better feeling than packing my case, getting in the car and driving to a shoot. It's funny how something that was once, I don't want to say a chore, but it was getting to the point where we were ready for a break. Yeah. And now it's like everyone, I'm like, yes, come on, next one, let's go. 18 months off. And equally, I think anyone that didn't outsource before, maybe now it's more prevalent in their minds because they've seen what that family life is like. They've seen, that they can spend the days in the week with their children, or they can go out on a surprise date with their partner that day because if they were stuck editing, all those things suddenly aren't as possible.
Yeah. It's a huge amount of energy, I think, that's being brought to a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, definitely. So in terms of like, let's say we're coupled up with an editor and things are going great, we're with a few edits in, how do your team kind of start to nurture that relationship with a client?
To nurture the relationship?
Yeah, just kind of getting to know their client on more than just an editing basis.
The conversation usually happens through email. I think there's, we try to have the editors be themselves and just get to know their clients. I think we try as much as possible to pair up editors that we think would go along with the clients. It's an interesting thing because we try to be as objective as possible, but obviously there's some editors have some, strengths and certain types of edits, and we try to pair that up. So that's for the talent of our, editors. And then through email, we've seen a lot of different relationships build over the years as well. We have editors that have been with us since the beginning. So we're talking about, editor and photographers working together for the last six years. So that's amazing. And it's really part of the journey for the photographer to, to share that success, their own success with the editor. So that's, we've had a lot of stories like that. For example, some photographers have published books and, images that we've edited. We've seen billboards, we've seen, important weddings. It's really nice to see. We're really lucky to feel part of that journey with the clients. Yeah.
And I guess from the client perspective, they feel like they've got a real team that have their back, if that makes sense. Like, although I remember sending my first few off and thinking, I don't really know this person. Like, they're not sat in the office next to me. I can't glance over and check that it's all going well. Like, I can't just give a little tweak here and there. It's out of my hands. But the further along I got with that process, the more I felt like I was sending it to a friend. I was sending it to someone who actually edits it better than I do, as much as it pains me. And, you get to that point when you are, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 years down the line, where, I can't tell the difference with an image that I've edited to an image that I've outsourced. It's crazy how someone is really able to get into your head in that way and really see how you see it.
Yeah. And I guess you've been able to, vocalize what your preferences are over the years. And I think that's important.
Sure. My style, I want to say it's a difficult one. It maybe isn't a difficult one. It's very, very warm. It's very, it's got a real matte element to it, but it's still quite punchy. So it can take a little bit of time. And I certainly had that back and forth. But it was such a light bulb moment. And it was so evident when it happened, like things were just coming back and they were nailing it every single time.
Yeah. And we can also, I don't know if you did pre-edits for your editor as well, but that's something that's really successful too.
Yeah.
While we're working through the process and getting to know each other, so the photographer as much as the editor, doing some pre-edits. It's often also the sneak peeks that clients send out to their clients. So if a photographer wants to send a few images out to their clients, that can become a good direction for the editor. So we usually recommend different lighting situations so that we make sure to cover all of the, easy situations, but also difficult situations, because sometimes that's where the challenge is to know how to edit in difficult situations. It's a process. It's for sure. It's great. And that when you have that, aha moment, when you finally reach the point where you're happy with the edits, it's so relieving. And I'm sure just hearing you, I think it resonates across the board when it's really successful.
Absolutely. Definitely. So tell us about, what's to come with Image Salon? Are there new things in your sights now that you've stepped into the role as CEO? Like, what can we expect?
Yeah, we're going to keep on evolving. I think the last 18 months have been, challenging with the whole industry. So we've managed to navigate the team towards, opening up. What's to come? I'm excited to say that just this week, actually, we launched Phyto, which is our AI-powered editing service.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I'm so happy to talk about this because it's another level of service. Obviously, we talked about profiles and having an assigned editor. But for maybe photographers who just want the proofs out or, get the base edits out, we have a 500 image trial right now, which you can try out the service. We've worked really hard. Actually, we took the time during the pandemic to develop this with our tech partners, and we just launched it yesterday, so it's brand new, but it's exciting, and I think this is where Image Salon will eventually evolve, just bringing in new technology to help out, while still keeping, the essence of Image Salon has always been tailoring, customizing the approach for each client and building. We talked a lot about that relationship. I think it's going to stay. It's the essence of who we are. But branching out to different levels of service so that, for for different kinds of photographers who don't necessarily want to talk to somebody or exchange or give feedback. I think it's a great way to start with the edits. So you're welcome to try it, actually, Sally, if you're.
I'd love to.
So it's phyto.com.
Amazing, fantastic.
Yeah, that's the exciting part. I can tell you about that, and I'm excited for the future. We'll keep on evolving and growing the team as well. Locally, we've also started working. We have our own studio, so we started working on photography as well. So that's great as well.
Amazing. Watch this space.
Yeah.
So Victoria, if there's anything that you could change about your career kind of right back when, is there anything that you would think I'd tweak that or I wouldn't do that?
It's a good question. I don't think it's a tough one. Yes. I don't think I have a typical photographer journey. And I'm grateful for everything that I've had so far. So I tend not to look to the past and just move forward. And it's been, I don't think I would change anything because, early on in my career, I was, I had this high, exhilarating, adventurous life as a photographer. And I think I learned a lot. Which brought me where I am today, and always looking for a new challenge. I'm curious by nature, so I always want to evolve. So I don't. Is it cheesy to say? I wouldn't change it. I think
it's not cheesy at all. I think that a lot of people in our industry like to say, I wouldn't change a thing. It's that age-old thing that your past makes your present, doesn't it? And it molds you as a person and takes you down that path. You change one thing in your past and maybe you wouldn't be sat there as CEO of Image Salon right now. Like it's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
Love it. If you can add a final piece of advice for us, Victoria, something that has really made an impact on your business life or your personal life, what would that one piece of advice be?
I would say don't try and compare yourself to others. I think that's the biggest that I've applied to myself and that I usually, give to others. Especially in our industry, there's so many presets, there's so many types of photography, and then we tend to, especially with Instagram, we tend to compare ourselves and try different things. And it's great to try different things, but I think keeping your head to the paper, hustling the way that you do, and then trying to, hone in onto your own style. And I think it's more rewarding than trying to emulate what's out there. And trends, and then as a business, we try to, always stay ahead of the trends, but I think trends come and go. So it's important to keep at it, the way that you feel good doing your job, as a photographer. So yeah, that would be it.
I love that. If any of our listeners would like to get in touch with Image Salon, Victoria, how can they do that?
We have our website, so imagesalon.com. We're active on social media as well. So Facebook, we have our community account and also our public account. And then our Instagram page, we try to stay as active as possible. Yeah.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure. I've loved every single second. I know that any listeners that kind of weren't sure on outsourcing or hadn't ever looked into it before will be going away with a fountain of knowledge. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a pleasure. I will hopefully catch you again soon.
Yes, same here.
Thanks, Victoria. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, that's everything from me today. Thank you so much again to Victoria for coming and joining us on the show and sharing her vast amount of expertise and knowledge when it comes to outsourcing. If you'd like to see the show notes, you can head to www.studioninja.co/episode 40. Please don't forget to rate us on the podcast platform that you're listening on. A little bit of love goes a very long way. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of NinjaCast, brought to you by Studio Ninja. Beautifully designed and super easy to use, Studio Ninja will help you manage your leads, clients, shoots, invoices, contracts, workflows, and so much more. To learn more or start your 30-day free trial, go to www.studioninja.co.